And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Kelly Roman's our guest. Kelly is park ranger up at Fort Stanwix National Monument. What's the difference between, Kelly, a national monument such as Fort Stanwix and something that's designated as a national park?
So essentially, we're all managed by the National Park Service. So Fort Stanwix is considered a lowercase national park. But the big designation, national park, is reserved for natural places. Places like Yellowstone, Acadia, Yosemite, those places that have natural features that you cannot necessarily find anywhere else, whether they're biological, geological, things that we treasure as our nation that are in nature. Whereas a national monument usually denotes something that has already happened. And many national monuments have big stone markers. So many of the visitors that come our way are astonished that there's actually a fort there, but the fort itself is that marker, that memorial or monument. So the difference is basically in how things are recognized. With that being said, there's a few natural-like areas like Devil's Tower that are designated as monuments. There was also historic things that have happened there traditionally for native cultures and pioneers heading westward. And there are parks that have historic aspects to them as well. Like Yosemite. Yosemite had the Buffalo Soldiers through that area. And they have a large living history program similar to we do, just dedicated to the Buffalo Soldiers. So it's really a matter of what the overall designation of the park is that kind of connotes what their story is about.
You mentioned Devil's Tower there in passing. Are you talking about on the Outer Banks?
Oh, no. Devil's Tower, the big stone obelisk out west, I believe it was used in Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind. That's where the aliens came to visit us. So that Devil's Tower.
On your website, on the Fort Stanwix website, they show the, it's a nice, I forget the name of it now, but it's about the history of how the fort evolved from, what are they calling that?
From memory to monuments.
Memory to monuments, yeah. That's a nice, shows the blueprints, it shows a lot of old photos.
Yeah, that is a continuation of the exhibit that we began in 2016 when the park was celebrating its 40th anniversary of being open to the public. So you can see the in-person versions of that at the Rome Historical Society and at the Fort Visitor Center for the time being. But online is kind of a little bit more behind the scenes, and if you can't make it, then hopefully you can still see some of the really cool stuff from that exhibit.
Talking about people that make it or can't make it, what's attendance like at Fort Stanwix these days?
It's a little bit lower this year. Last year we peaked at about 96,000 if I remember my numbers correctly, and we're down about 10% or so this year. We'll see how the year wraps up after our special events. But attendance for special events has been very steady. So we've seen increased visitation for things like Honor America Day, 4th of July. That might have had to do with the fact it was in the middle of the week. And we've had continuous participation in things like our bike rides and park special events like the escape room. So it's been a little bit littler, smaller, and I suppose it's because the anniversary effect has worn off from both the Park Service Centennial and our 40th anniversary in 2016, but we're still doing good. And
you mentioned special events. Mysteries, Myth, and Mayhem is one that's upcoming, yes?
Yes, sir. Mysteries, Myths, and Mayhem takes place on October 27th, Saturday in the evening. It's a tour, it's a program where you'll want to come at about 6:30, and groups of people will be led by folks to the fort. And it's one of our few events during the year that takes place in third person. So you'll meet people from the time period who will be telling some of the scarier stories. And by that, I don't necessarily mean ghost stories. I mean true life horror tales. People being shot at, people being scalped, people dying because they don't have the right type of antiseptic. All sorts of interesting things that really happen that suit themselves well to that time of the year when you're storytelling.
That's the way it used to be when the fort first started, Kelly, where the park rangers and the volunteers all would talk in the third person.
Yeah, that became kind of confusing over the years as our staff and our volunteer force dwindled, and I wouldn't say dwindled, but started to pare itself away. We'd get people who would come in and they didn't necessarily want to talk to someone in first person. They had modern questions like what the bells from the church nearby are, and you had to pretend you didn't know.
Right.
And you also got people in who wanted to stump the ranger. Could they make you slip up and say that you're not really from the 18th century? And then, to our credit, as people from around the world began to visit, they just had no clue what was going on. So by breaking that wall, by I am here to tell those stories, I'll wear this clothing so you can get a better understanding, I'll tell their stories so you can get a better understanding, and I'll demonstrate to you what they did. It was able to open up much more dialogue than we would have had if we stayed just in first person all of those years later. So we still do it. Like I said, this event is one of them. And we have smaller vignettes that take place at some of the other events. But there's someone there to help to explain you what's going on. So if you're coming in from, I don't know, Great Britain, you're not totally confused as to why people are running around pretending they actually do live in the 18th century.
In addition to Mysteries, Myth, and Mayhem on October 27th, you got another program coming up too, don't you?
Well, we have another program coming up in November. That's our holiday open house, last event of the year, one of my favorites. Some of the guys at WKL in Rome, I go on about it every single time I'm there. So that's their favorite event too, from my understanding. But we also have what we're calling our Please Play on the Grass campaign. So there's a couple more weeks till the weather gets awful. Although today I think we're experiencing third summer.
Very nice. Yeah.
Maybe fake fall, I'm not sure. But with that being said, we're in the middle of the city of Rome. We're a giant green space. People can come out, they can fly their kites. You can play some football with your friends, kickball, and go Pokemon hunting. But we want people to be able to enjoy that park. We've had YMCA folks there who have done classes on the lawn. And some might say, well, you're a historic park. Why are you doing that? And to me, I'd say the people who were at that fort, they fought so we could be free enough to enjoy ourselves downtown in Rome with our family and friends. So come out and enjoy the lawn. Please play on the grass.
Is there any, is it Christmas and Thanksgiving? There's only a couple of days a year when you're closed, correct?
Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, and beginning in January, lasting till March, or the end of March, the park is closed on Sundays and Mondays. But aside from those 3 days scattered and that weekend period, because the weather is cruddy and we can't really get into the fort, we're open 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. I can't count.
And you're open how late?
We're open from 9 to 5 every day. The fort time itself varies a bit, but the visitor center is always 9 to 5.
Okay, I've got a question to you about flags. So when we come back, we'll talk to Kelly Roman about flags. What flew over Fort Stanwix? We'll ask her. Short break, right back.